A casket for my mother. Craig Donnelly was finally back at his parents' house and settling in, having just returned from a 2-year stint as an English teacher in China. His bedroom was just as he had left it after college. He sat down at his desk and turned on his old computer. When he opened his web browser, he was surprised to find that he was still signed into Facebook. The village where Craig taught didn't have Wi-Fi, and even when he could get online, his regular email client and the social media sites he frequented were blocked by the government. He had dozens of private messages waiting for him. Some were from friends who were wondering where he had gone. Others from family messaging him in hopes that he might log on at some point in his travels. Craig didn't bother reading more than a few of the messages, as he was more interested in getting a sense of what was happening in the present. He scrolled down his timeline, passing over news stories, celebrity gossip, advertisements, and political hodgepodge. Nothing of any interest to a man who had been abroad for years. What gave him pause was a GoFundMe post from his old friend, Tim Burns. The funding request was titled, "A Casket for My Mother." The brief summary simply read, "Help me pay for a casket for my recently deceased mother." Craig was shocked to discover that Tim's mom had passed and that his own parents hadn't mentioned it when they picked him up from the airport that morning. Their families had been close growing up and throughout high school, and had only lost touch when both boys went to separate universities. But Craig had stayed in contact with Tim via social media in the intervening years, and certainly felt for his friend when he read of his mother's death. He shared Tim's GoFundMe post and wrote him a message. "I'm sorry to hear about your mother. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help." Minutes later, Craig received a message from Tim, thanking him for his kind words. Craig told his old friend about his teaching gig in China, that he had only come home that morning and didn't know Tim's mother had died until he opened his computer. "She was a nice woman, and I only have good memories of her when we were young. She treated me like I was her own kid," wrote Craig. "I'm sorry we haven't kept in touch the past couple years. I was in a really rural part of China, and there was no real access to the internet." "Thanks, Craig. I hope you get a chance to stop by and see us. I miss hanging out with you," replied Tim. "Well, I don't have much going on this afternoon. If you're free, I'd love to stop by." Tim told Craig to stop over whenever he had the time. Later that day, Craig pulled into Tim's driveway and saw that his friend was out trimming the hedges. Craig hopped out of the car, and the pair greeted each other warmly, hugging and laughing. They chatted for the next half hour about what each had been up to, what they had in mind for their immediate futures, and how Tim had been dealing with his loss. An odd combination of smells, citrus and vinegar, wafted around Craig as they talked and laughed about old memories. He didn't think much of the strange smells at the time and fished out his checkbook. "Hey, let me write you a check toward the casket." At first, Tim resisted, but he didn't put up much of a fight when Craig insisted. Craig searched his pockets for a pen. When he realized he had forgotten to bring a pen, Tim said he'd go grab one and ran up the porch steps and into the house. While Craig waited, he took out his phone and saw that he had a private message from his and Tim's mutual friend, Adam. "Dude, I saw that you shared Tim's GoFundMe page. Have you actually read it? I think he's running a scam." Confused, Craig opened the GoFundMe page. The request had been active for 33 days, and $0 had been raised. He thought it odd that no one had donated. He read the description. "My mother has suddenly passed, and I can't afford a proper casket for her burial. Please help me purchase a casket for my mother. There are many great perks for the different tiers. She was a wonderful woman and mother." It all seemed like a fairly normal crowdfunding request until he scrolled down to the perks. Donate $5 and you will have my mother's eternal thanks. Donate $10 and you will receive a flower from my mother's grave, plus previous tier. Donate $20 and you will receive a piece of my mother's burial linen, plus previous tiers. Donate $40 and you will receive a lock of my mother's hair, plus previous tiers. Craig found the page slightly morbid, but it wasn't entirely out of character for Tim to be unaware of social norms and etiquette. He had always been a somewhat strange character. Still, it didn't make sense why neither Adam nor any of his other friends had pledged. He messaged Adam, "Yeah, it's a bit weird, but why hasn't anyone donated yet?" Craig was waiting for Adam's response when Tim called out to him from behind the screen door. "I found a pen, man. Come on in." He went up and into the house, feeling bad that nobody had given Tim any money toward his mother's funerary casket. When he stepped through the door, he was taken aback by an odd sight. Dozens of air fresheners were stuck to the walls and even the ceiling. Lemon-scented chemicals assaulted Craig's nose, and he almost had to step back outside to get some air. But he pushed forward, following Tim into the parlor, which looked exactly as it had when they were kids. Even the TV had yet to be upgraded to a flat screen. Tim handed him a pen, and Craig began writing out a check for $100. "So is your mom still at the morgue? That's gotta be expensive in itself," said Craig, making small talk. "I can't imagine insurance would pay much toward that." "No," said Tim, snickering. Craig looked up at his friend, bewildered by his reaction. "Then where is she?" Tim turned and called upstairs. "Mother, Craig's here. He'd like to see you." The room was silent, as both pairs of ears listened for a response, as if it would naturally come. "Mother?" Craig shook his head as if to clear it from his sudden confusion. "Just a minute, man," said Tim before running upstairs. Craig froze, unable to process exactly what was occurring. He listened intently as Tim stomped up the 2 separate flights of stairs and into the room above. He heard some shuffling, grunting, and then something heavy being dragged across the floor. Soon there was a as the mass was pulled down the stairs, followed by a loud in the landing. Craig was shaken from his daze and ran from the house, just as Tim was turning the corner in the landing with whatever he was about to bring down the lower set of stairs and into the parlor. While Craig sped back home, he pulled out his phone, wondering whether or not he should call the police on his old friend, or try and forget the whole thing and never talk to him again. He saw that Adam had responded to his previous message. "Dude, she died over a year ago. I was at her funeral. I told him he should just get her cremated, but he insisted she wanted to be buried. They charged him an arm and a leg for that crappy plywood box they stuck her in. We pitched in what we could." When Craig got home, he blocked Tim on Facebook, on his phone, and on every other mode of communication he could think of. He needed some time to process what had occurred. Days later, he received a small, unmarked package in the mail. Inside lay a withered white lily, a piece of solid linen, a lock of hair, and a thank you note, signed by Tim's mother with her eternal gratitude.